Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about professionalism. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what would you say it means to behave like a professional software engineer? I would say that three things will be necessary in order for you to be perceived as a professional. So by far and wide, the most important thing is, which is sad, your mannerisms, basically how you behave in a professional environment, the way you communicate, and that you know the jargon and so forth. The reason why I find this a little bit sad is because it's actually very common that companies mistake the ability to communicate as a professional for skill. And it happens a lot, especially in higher management, where a person with enough charisma and the right mannerisms can basically swing to an uninformed person that they know things and that they are able and so forth, and get work opportunities not on based on their skills, but rather based on the fact that the person who's doing the hiring is ignorant of how to evaluate those skills. Incidentally, it's the same criticism that I give to people when they vote in politics or they buy into a sales pitch or they support a celebrity or things like that, where, as I said, like, I try to point out to them that the thing that you are impressed by is not proven skill. You are being impressed by mannerisms, charisma, and things like that. And although that is well and fine in many situations, it's probably not something that you want for someone who's supposed to deliver results. And that's the next thing, which is, as I said, sadly enough, secondary. After you have mastered mannerisms, usually the next thing is that you have technical skills to back it up with. That's a fairly important part, because fundamentally, like, depending on your role, if you're all management, then you can basically survive with the first, if you're good enough. And I know that for a fact because I work with people who know absolutely fuck all about development and so forth, but they have jobs where that is supposed to be a requirement. But the way that they solve those problems, as I like to say, they are professional facilitators, because that is how middle management usually works. If you're completely ignorant of the topic, and I've said so myself, I can run a hospital, I can even run a country, if the only thing I need to know is how to communicate and invite people who actually know how to do something into meetings. That's the core and the essence of what a worthless product manager or similar sort of facilitator does. The only thing they need to know is who knows how to do a thing, and then invite them to a meeting and then get them to do the thing. And if that is leadership, we can discuss that. I personally don't think that that is leadership in any sense of the word. It is, as I said, facilitation, and there is a place for that. But for us software developers, unless you're at higher management, at some point you're going to have to write some code. And so that's the second part. So those two, I would say, are the main things that you need in order to be perceived as a real professional software developer. The third and last one, I would say, which is a little bit, well, it's not necessarily something you need to be able to do, but it's something that will mark you as a more professional type of software developer, and that is to have a business mindset. Basically, when I say business mindset, I mean that when you write software, you are aware of that the rationalities and the reasonings behind your different technology choices should always be tied into what's going to be most beneficial for the company. Because as a junior, as a philosopher type of programmer, or someone who is a little bit too much into the coding itself, you will tend usually to focus more on using the coolest framework, the coolest tool, or the trendiest trend that you've read about on Medium or whatever you're reading about, right? You basically make the software development in about the software that you like, the software craft itself, and not about bringing value to your customer. That's the mark of a true master, or a true what I like to call a true senior. That's when you get to be very, very popular and very trustworthy. If you can explain, if you have these other two things, like if you can do this thing as well, basically everybody is going to want you on their team, and everybody is going to want to hire you, because they will see like the way that you present yourself. If you have the mannerisms and you know how to deliver, and on top of that you seem to be able to relate to their needs, because usually what software developers do, as I said, is that they focus on things like tech depth, and they focus about good coding practices and stuff like that, and all these things are important, but they always miss the fundamental thing, and that is that those things are important because the system needs to be up to snuff. Basically, it has to work in a desired way for the customer, but that is not, like the code quality is not more important than the business value. I have an analogy that I use where is a lot of software developers who haven't really gotten to the real level of professionalism. They will talk to a customer, and the customer wants a shed or like a little cottage or something like that, and the software developers goes and builds a skyscraper instead, because they forget that the customer is the thing that is in focus here. Like the thing that the customer wants is supposed to be the thing you're building, but instead they make it about themselves, and they make something that is more complicated than it needs to be. They take unnecessary risks, or so forth and so forth. They don't really care about what the customer wants. They care about what they want to build. That's the last thing. If you can master that part, these three things, I would say that that's pretty much it, really. And then most of it is maturity, understanding that, you know, not getting your way in a company is a given, having a little bit of personal control and keeping a level head, not getting into fights to people. As I said, like if you understand that part, the last part, you shouldn't really get all that much tension between yourself and other software developers and so forth, because you realize that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day how the code works. If you, ideally, you mean, as I said, if you really want to avoid tech debt at all costs, but if people are forcing you, if your customer is forcing you, like imagine a contractor who gets a contract where the customer wants them to build a house in Legos or of pancakes or whatever, like, you know that there's 100 ways that you can make this a lot nicer, but right now that is what the customer wants. So you try your best to build based on the restrictions that you have been given, and that, I argue, is to be a true professional. You inform, you try to be a good support to your stakeholder, but ultimately you can never forget that you're writing code to make them happy. So you can only do that as well as you can. So what I want you to take away from this is that to be a real professional software developer, I would argue that three things are necessary, and in order usually, sadly enough. First and foremost, mannerisms. People will hire a mediocre or really shitty software developer if they just know how to talk the talk and behave with the mannerisms and so forth. And that is, I would argue, that in combination with your CV and prior experiences and so forth, that is at least 80% of the reasons why you get to be a higher management or things like that as a developer or as a technical professional of any sort, because most of the people who are doing the evaluation, they buy with the sense of the sensation that you are giving them. You can think about it yourself. I mean, I do the same thing. If I talk to my doctor or a lawyer or a real estate broker or something like that, I don't know anything about their craft, which means that I go a lot on how my experience, like what type of energy vibe am I getting from this person. So if they know how to act like a professional, look informed, have good answers, understand me and relate to me, and these sort of things, these social skills or soft skills as we call that is the thing that is going to be 99% of my evaluation until we get to the second stage where they're supposed to deliver something. And if they never have to deliver anything really, then I will never know. But if we for the sake of argument, say it's just a regular software senior, mid-level, junior, or something like that, sooner or later you're going to have to deliver. And that brings us to the second thing. You're going to need to be able to talk and walk the walk. You don't necessarily have to be the best at it, but you're going to need to be able to produce something that is up to specification or up to expectation or something like that. And then third and lastly is you need to be able to relate to the customer, to have a business mindset and things like that, because usually a lot of software developers focus more on just doing their own thing, or like just getting a specification right and so forth, and they sort of forget that that's how I argue shitty systems are built. You make it the responsibility of somebody else to understand your customer and what they need and what they want and so forth. And that is because you only really focus on yourself, being able to collect your paycheck, go home, all these sorts of things, all those sorts of things, right? But any business owner, any business manager will be able to tell you, and it's been repeated until like I don't know how many times now, that in order to have happy customers, to keep them, you need to basically treat them well. You need to treat your customers well. You need to relate to your customer. You need to understand your customer. And as software developers, there's no exception there either. Because if you understand your customer and you understand when to build a really, really big skyscraper, something super, super advanced, because it is perfect for their needs, and when it's perfect to just build a really simple little application, little shed or cottage or something like that, you still build that thing really, really well, but you know when to do one or the other because you have taken the time to understand what they want. That's when they're going to come back to you. And these three together, they will, the sky's the limit for you. I promise you, if you master these three things, you're going to be able to go as far as you want in IT. Have a great day.